is our organizational meeting. And as such, we need to appoint a temporary chair.
I move that we appoint Chris Finkelstein as the temporary chair for the organizational meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think it's everyone. Great, thank you. The first order of business is to elect officers for our new board going forward. Audio, no video.
It takes a second to catch up.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for chairman?
I would like to nominate Chris Finkelstein.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations for chairman? Seeing none, can we have a vote on the motion to approve Chris Finkelstein as chairman? Oh, I'm sorry, we're doing ballots.
Ballots.
Oh.
Suspenseful.
She's stealth.
I know
Nobody
people
can
at
see
home.
her. She's in Canada.
A special shout out to Bruce and Beth who are
Oh,
watching.
I'm sure he's watching.
And there he
I don't
is.
have one.
Is he watching?
Yes. Video works.
Here?
Thank
Nope,
you.
There you go.
Okay, we're gonna put Bruce away.
6 votes for Chris Finkelstein.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next order of business is to elect a vice chairman. I would like to make a motion that we approve Laura Schwem as vice chairman.
Second.
Are there any other motions for vice chairman? Okay, can everyone please submit your ballot?
Votes for Laura Schwem.
Congratulations. Wonderful. And we need to elect a new secretary. I would like to make a motion that Lori Rothstein serve as secretary.
I'll second.
Second. Are there any other motions? Okay, can everyone please vote then?
Votes for Lori Austin.
Congratulations,
Lori.
Lori. Congratulations. Okay, thank you very much.
Good job, Lucille.
Thank you, Lucille, yeah, it's organized. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda consists of 3 documents. One is an appointment of Shipman and Goodman to serve as counsel to the board. Second, to reappoint Dr. Jean Freilich as our medical advisory. And third is the appointment of designation of signatories for each school and for the school lunch program. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Next is approval of our 2018 meeting date calendars, which also includes committees of the board. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And the last item is approval of board committee members. That includes the 3 committees of the board, which is the Business Operations Committee, which will be Debbie Lowe and Glenn Hemmerly, the Policy and Communications, which will be Chris Finkelstein and Gretchen Jeans, and the Teaching and Learning Committee, which will be Lori Rothstein and Laura Schwem. And then we have a list of committee liaisons where Board of Education members serve on various committees, including the Wilton Educational Foundation, the Wilton Youth Committee, or Council, excuse me, the Parent Advisory Board. Anyone at home who's interested in the whole list, that's available on our website. Is there a motion to approve those committee designations? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And the final document on the agenda are just some informational materials, which everyone should already have. And I think you guys received them in your orientation materials amongst the thousands of documents we gave you. Is there a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. All right, with that, we're ready to open our regular December 7th regular meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. As we do at every meeting, we'd like to welcome comments from the public. I know we have gentlemen from WEF here tonight, as well as Mr. Brenner. Would someone like to start us off? Joe, why don't you come on up? Please state your name and your address, and we would love to hear from you.
Yes, my name is Joe Brenner, 72 Indian Hill Road in Wilton.
Great. Do you want to have a seat?
Sure.
I think you'd be better for the microphone.
Okay, so, can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Is it, the sound is on.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me for this opportunity to share a few comments. First of all, I'm reminded of a cartoon that appeared many years ago. 2 gentlemen sitting at a table like this, but with their hands behind their heads, very relaxed, and their feet up on the table. And the caption said, "Next week, we've got to get organized." So congratulations on a very effective organizational start. Much of what I have to say quickly tonight has already been discussed in the press and in public forums. But I came again this evening under a new administration to try to start the action again, to have some discussions on these items, which I've been associated for a long time. Some of you may have seen my columns in the Wilton Bulletin over the years. One appeared this morning. It was a reply to a pop quiz that I offered last month, questions that were really addressed not to the academic staff, the student-facing facilities and resources, but to the administrative and support staff. Because I believe we're at a critical time now in the community with uncertain times ahead, where we need everyone pulling on the oars, and we need to share the work that needs to be done. A couple of questions I just want to review this evening very quickly is, I've asked this several times, who within this K-12 district education organization has specific written responsibility for anything like operational efficiency or cost reduction? And are these incentives and motivation actually to reach measurable goals and results? I've asked that before. I am keenly aware this is not a corporate setting and this is not a business enterprise, but what studies have shown across the country in the last 17 years is that very few superintendents, very few people at all have such written objectives. And so therefore it makes it very difficult to incent and motivate people to do what perhaps they may not be so comfortable doing, but the town may want to do. For example, minimize the budget increases, seek efficiency, seek effectiveness, seek productivity. And then a next question is for the pop quiz, how about the rest of the staff? Remember the old quotation, wars are too important to be left to the generals alone. I think budgets are too important to be left to the senior executives of K-12. So the question is, how about in the processes which operate within their workspaces? Do they seek improvement? Are they incented to do this? If you all judge that we need to do something in the improvement area, how do we get their cooperation to do that? Those are the things I've been talking about. And again, surveys have shown that it's rarely one finds such quantifiable objectives. Now the next question is something I've been a hawk on all the time. I carry it around in my back pocket, the enrollment curves. You've probably seen some of my stuff on that. There's no question about what's happening. It was reported the other night at a finance meeting that the state demographers have shown where Wilton is headed in the next 5 years in population. Forget the enrollment curves, we know those. The people who are leaving this town and others. And the only growth communities are Hartford and Bridgeport and Stamford and perhaps Waterbury. So now the question is there potential in recovering from the go-go years that I call them, 93 to 2000, when 700 students were added to the enrollment number and 100 staff. That's a 1 to 7 ratio. What I was suggesting only that the beginning of any exercise to recover those costs might take a look at as the enrollment curve bends downward as I predicted. I was on the enrollment subcommittee, the Middlebrook Building Committee. We looked at all these things. Brought in a consultant from several universities here in town to study the question of the enrollment forecasting and enrollment directions. So now that it's happened, no one argues whatsoever about it. You can take the numbers that Kendra Baker has reported, but I'm also talking about the demographic numbers that come from the state, okay? So the question is, in the face of a declining population, is there something we can harvest from normal attrition or whatever other means might be available to us to recapture some of that cost? And Christine, where does that cost go? It goes into new initiatives. It becomes more of a self-sustaining mechanism. Okay, you ask for some stuff, you can show how you can source it, okay? It doesn't all go to the question of leaner and meaner budgets whatsoever. So, I'm going to conclude in this way, and thank you for your kind attention, by making sure you know I'm in the newspaper, I'm in the telephone book, you can get me via email. I would be pleased to meet with any or all of you to discuss in great detail what the surveys and records that I've been introduced to in the past from people who study this nationwide, these phenomena, these solutions, these problems, these challenges, okay? Be happy to meet with you and get through some more detail. So I want to make sure you understand that. But this detailed work I'm talking about of sizing.
Joe, we're really over on time.
Am I over time?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
May
Thank
I be
you.
another minute more? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So where does the detailed work go? It doesn't come from folks like myself or other people, volunteers in town. It comes from the resources and staff right here in the Wilton Public Schools. They've got the skills, they've got the resources. So there's an equation here, cost and value. The value of education is unquestionable. I've experienced it in so many ways myself here, and it's more than well established. This board, I think, I leave you with this exhortation. You need to concentrate on the cost side of the equation. I think that there are lots of opportunities to produce overall better outcomes. I'd love to talk to any of you further on that. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Great.
All right.
President Finkelstein, members of the Board of Education, my name is Brian Labig. I'm the co-chair of the Wilton Education Foundation. And here tonight joining me is Jim Kinnian, another member of our board and our board liaison for WEF. And we're really pleased to be here tonight to just speak very briefly on some of the important work that WEF is doing. Just following up on the former gentleman that spoke, you know, one of the things that I think drives the work of the Wilton Education Foundation is a really steadfast commitment to the idea that investing in our children in this community is the single most important endeavor, we think, of any town, of any school district, and of any school board. And we really respect the efforts that you bring to bear in trying to keep that priority front and center for the town and for the Board of Finance and for the public school students. So thank you for that. WEF has been really busy this past fall. We've been trying to get organized in anticipation of the events that are coming up that support our students and our schools this spring. Part of that work has been to try to make sure that we clarify for our community the work that WEF does, and we're really excited about the brochure that we're sharing with you today. That's made possible by the handiwork of Tracy Locke and its contributions and their donations of time and trying to help us present an image and a brand that helps to clarify what the work of WEF is. So I share this with you. It's part of our annual appeal that we'll be sending out to our community this December. As a matter of fact, it's going out next week, which we're really excited about. And it describes some of the community-based events that WEF gets organized around throughout the spring, from Reading Rocks to Acoustic Wilton to the 5K event, all oriented toward not only raising funds to support our students and to provide those beyond the classroom experiences, but also to involve our community in the kinds of outreach that we think are really essential to connecting community to schools to kids. And we're really excited about that. And in support of that, we're also here tonight to share with you a donation on behalf of the Wilton Education Foundation. This is a check for $10,000 to support professional development in the district. We know, in working with Chuck and Andrea and Kevin, there's so many important priorities for the growth of our faculty and supporting their work, and WEF wants to continue with that tradition. So we're excited to make this donation now and look forward to making a matching donation in the spring, as well as funding other projects that we know will be coming our way, because there's no shortage of interest and applications. So we're pleased to make that donation.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Photo op, Chris? No?
Is that,
We can do that too.
Oh,
Yeah, photo op.
thank you
Definitely.
very much.
You're very
Thank you
welcome.
for
Thank
everything.
you.
Camera,
Grateful.
a photo op?
Here.
Well, you're very welcome.
Hey, photographer.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing the photo? Why don't-
Right, scooch over.
You guys want to come over here?
Yeah, come around to
Okay,
the-
in front of the official Wilton Public Schools.
How come it's not one of those big giant?
We need that, don't we?
Right, right.
But next time.
3-foot big banner.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you again.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Well, that's certainly a nice way to
Wow,
start.
wow.
Yes,
That's a pretty good start for your first meeting.
right?
Yeah.
Good job, Chris.
Is there anyone else?
Anyone else with a check?
You don't have a bell, you should be ringing the bell, right?
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all, yes, and Joe, you too. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda?
Yes,
Is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
Second?
second.
Any comments? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next is, I have a quick board chair's report. First, I'd just like to thank you and to tell you what a tremendous honor it is to be elected to serve as chairman of this board. We do really good work, and I really look forward to continuing the tremendous progress that has been set in motion by boards before us, and it's just really quite an honor, and I want you to know that I don't take it lightly. So thank you. I'd also like to welcome our 2 new members. Debbie Lowe and Gretchen Jeans are here tonight. Congratulations to you. I know that you are going to be tremendously productive and innovative members of our board. You've already put in a significant number of hours before you even got here
Welcome to the
tonight.
board.
So we really look forward to working with you, and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. A few weeks ago, we had the annual conference of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education and School Superintendents. I mentioned at our last meeting that we had heard that we were being honored with an award. In fact, it was quite an impressive award. It was the Leadership Award, Tier 2 Leadership Award, they call it. And I wasn't quite ready for really what it was, but it turns out there were only 5 districts out of the whole state that got this award. So I was really honored to accept it on behalf of our Board of Education, and unfortunately, I don't have it with me this evening.
But we believe
it's out in the car, but you'll all be very proud to see that it is quite a significant award. It was just really nice to know that we're to be recognized by our peers up there. I think sometimes we sort of think we exist in this little bubble of Wilton. But all over Connecticut, there are people in their own little bubbles doing this work. So it was very nice to know that we're singled out for our work. 2 housekeeping issues. I'm going to be in touch with you to schedule 2 meetings, non-regular board meetings. One is a board workshop. I think because we have 2 new members and we're sort of coming together as a new board, there are some issues that we can meet and talk about in a little bit less structured format than the regular board meeting. I'd like to do that sometime in January. I don't think it's realistic to get that done before then. So please expect an email to get that set up. And secondly, is to set up a special board meeting to meet with our legislators. That would be Senator Boucher, State Representative Lavielle, and State Representative O'Day. Last year we met with State Representative Lavielle, and it was really helpful. I think we all got a lot out of it. She was preparing to push legislation on unfunded mandates. So it was very interesting for her to get our perspectives and to really see this take shape with her. And she was successful. I mean, she wasn't the sole author of it, but she was a key sponsor. And it was just nice to have some of our concerns addressed that way. So that will also take place in January. So you will get two notices for upcoming meetings. And I apologize for not pointing out that literally Superintendent Smith is not here this evening. Dr. Kevin Smith is traveling this evening, but we are very happy to have Assistant Superintendent Chuck Smith filling in tonight. I don't know if you have a superintendent's report?
No, I don't have a report, but I would like to, on behalf of all of the staff and the teachers and the administrators, to also welcome our 2 new board members and say how much we're looking forward to getting to know you and to working with you, as we do with all of the board members.
Thank you. Thank you. Committee reports. I know teaching and learning because I saw Lori's car outside this afternoon. Did you guys met today? Do you have? Is there a report?
I was just stalking the school. No, yes, we had a meeting this morning. Several things on the agenda. Notably, things to talk about is we had visitors. John Klein, who is the president of A Better Chance Wilton, was there with Michael Gordon, who is the boys' house director, and let me get the name right, Max Gabrielson, who is the academic advisor, was there, and they gave us a great overview of the ABC program, how it works here in Wilton. We have currently 14 scholars participating, 8 boys and 6 girls. Gave us a chance to really ask a lot of questions, mostly me.
Did you meet any of the students?
No, they weren't, not this morning, but it was a great opportunity, and I would encourage the community to go online and find out more about this program. It's 21 years, I think they said, it's been functioning now in Wilton. So, and we've graduated some fabulous kids from the program. So that was a really great update. The other update we got was Don Shells joined us along with Stephen Sobolowski, science teacher at the school, and they gave us an update on the virtual high school program that we're trying out this year. We had signed up, if you recall, to have 20 seats, as they call it, over the course of the year, and so far we've used about 17 of those, so 3 more spaces available for spring courses. And we talked about the pros and cons. You know, there's good things that have happened and some things that we're questioning, you know, was the rigor hard enough and that sort of thing. But all good stuff and going forward. And I think, Don, you said that you were going to propose that we sign up again for next year, so that'll be part of the budget we get from the high school. So it's worth going forward with that program. So those were the 2 main updates. Anything else you would want to add, Laura?
No, I just want to jump in. It was really helpful to have Steve Sobolowski there
Yeah.
because he's teaching a class at the virtual high school. And so Mr. Shells was telling us about the student side, but he was able to tell us about being a teacher on this platform, which was fascinating just because he's interacting with students. He started out with 24 students
Wow.
from all over the country. So, you know, just his experience and how much work it took to get the course up and running. But he's hitting a stride and learning things. And there's constant feedback between him and the program. You know, he thought another time he would set up the grading differently. And, you know, that was really a great opportunity. So thank you for high school for letting him come speak with us. It's
Great. Is there anything from business operations?
Okay, we did not meet today in Kevin's absence.
Okay.
So we haven't met since we last reported at our last board meeting. The Miller Driscoll Building Committee, we had an unbelievable open house in November. And I think probably a good estimate, maybe 250 plus people came through that Saturday morning. It was really great, and the comments were absolutely rave reviews and very positive comments in all age groups. Parents with prospective students, parents who had gone there many, many years ago when it was Miller and Driscoll. So everyone, it was just a great day, and to thank the staff there for their help, the volunteers we had that day. It was really a very positive experience. We are working to schedule an official ribbon cutting grand opening, and that will probably come about when we have finally closed everything out and have the official turnover from Turner to us, and for a turnover from Turner to the town. We'll probably try and do an official ribbon cutting with all the parties necessary there. From the Energy Commission, work has begun at both Miller Driscoll and Middlebrook on our solar program. And so you see flags. If you drive by Miller Driscoll, you'll see pennants around the roof where panels are being currently installed, et cetera. The high school work will begin shortly, and that was approved.
What's the timeline for that?
Well, it's weather dependent, okay? But hopefully within the next couple of months, or I would say within 90 days or so, we should be up and running, assuming the weather stays the same. We can work on the roof because it is a lot outside. So we're trying. We've been very fortunate so far, very lucky. We've had good weather. So
That could change tomorrow.
well, we don't
No,
have bad
tomorrow.
weather.
I think
Okay.
it's gonna snow
So
tomorrow.
that work,
Oh, well.
yeah, that work continues, and it will be. We will generate probably 25 to 30% of our electrical needs through the solar program. So it'll be a very efficient program. Over a 20-year period, we'll probably save the town in excess of $2 million or so. Okay.
Wow.
So
That's wonderful.
So it's a very and at no cost to the town. So it's
What schools? It's Miller Driscoll and the high
Miller
school?
and Middlebrook and the high school.
Oh, 3 of the schools. Okay.
And we are working on Solder Mill, going back to Solder Mill. The state is in a state of, well, turmoil to some extent with their energy campaign, their energy programs with the state, et cetera, but we continue to work on it. And we'll take advantage of every opportunity we have to reduce our cost for electricity in our buildings. And so these 3 schools will benefit greatly from the program. So that's it.
Thank you. I'd also like to, back on the Miller Driscoll open house, thank Patty Temple.
Oh, Patty, yes.
Who's a member of the building committee, but she did an amazing job with all the public relations
Yeah.
and getting the word out and
Well,
stuff.
and I would like to make
Coordinating.
one comment about the ABC program. I don't think people realize, we are one of, I think, maybe only 2 or 3 communities in the country that have both a boys and a
Oh,
girls' house.
okay.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're one of, I think there may be only 2 or 3 communities across the country that have the ABC program, that have both a boys and a girls' house. So it's really, it's just a phenomenal program. I can't say enough about
And
it.
Phenomenal.
and I'll mention that they also said that any of us are invited to join them any evening for dinner
Not
with,
any
with
evening.
the boys, with the girls, I'm sorry?
There's certain evenings.
Certain evenings,
Yeah.
okay, but you can contact them at any time. And they wanted to just express their gratitude to the board and to the community for our ongoing support of their program.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, the girls meet regularly at the library, and I met with them a couple times last year, and it's just, what a great group. I mean, just phenomenal. I mean, it's, hands down, it is a winning program. So to the extent the community can continue to support it and be part of it or engage with it, it's phenomenal.
Okay, and on policy and communications, we don't have a report because Dr. Smith was traveling this week and we did not meet. But we were going to hit the ground running. We're gonna have a really long
Extra
report.
work this week.
Review and discuss special services and, yeah, thank you. Andrea is going to give us an overview.
Good evening, everyone, and I too would like to welcome our new board members and congratulate those of you who were elected into your
Thank
new
you.
leadership positions tonight. Kevin had asked me to come and give a kind of state of the union about the special education and student services department since my arrival on July 1st. So I put together some information about where the current numbers stand. I did put in some narrative about the law itself for you and for the public to begin to get a better understanding of special education and its requirements. And also to take a look at, I know the DMC report weighs heavily, and so I wanted to share a little bit about some of the work that has been done and is ongoing in response to the DMC report, as well as some of the future work that I think needs to be addressed, both as in terms of the DMC report, as well as some of the themes that are emerging on what I've been calling my listening tour, meeting with staff, faculty, students, parents, and community members over the past 4 or 5 months, to get a sense of the community, what its values are, and how I can be of service to the community in educating your children with disabilities. So I won't go through the law stuff. That's readable, and I'm available for any questions people might have along the way. I would turn your attention to page 13, which is really just the October 1 numbers. Those are the numbers of students currently identified with disabilities receiving special education services across the categories of disability in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So you see that they are, that we have students with disabilities across all grade levels, and we have students with disabilities across all of the 13 disability categories. Like, not unlike the rest of the country, the category of disability that is most prevalent in town are students with specific learning disabilities. If you were to disaggregate that group, Connecticut has split the LD category to add a specific category for dyslexia, which the federal law does not do. So you can see that since the implementation of the law regarding changing over to dyslexia, we do have more students identified with dyslexia in specific, but that line item still does not reflect all the students with reading disorders. Much of the student with LD population are students who have reading disorders, where reading is most affected. So I just wanted you to know that those numbers that are only in the category of dyslexia, I think they misrepresent the number of students with learning disabilities, where reading is the primary source of the disability. So that is something that you'll see adjust over the years as more students are identified with dyslexia. Often you have students who may have both a reading, writing, and a math learning disability, so dyslexia would not cover, would really not tell the whole story of the range of that student's disability, and therefore they'd be an LD in the learning disability category. Does that make some sense?
Is there a move to have it even more like targeted in terms of reporting?
I think, there's always a, it depends on the lobbying efforts. If you end up with a dysgraphia society, you may end up with, we want to hear about dysgraphia too. However, I think, I don't think that there's a move to do that in terms of the federal legislation at all.
Okay.
There is no move to do that. But in terms of what might happen in and around the state legislature, that will remain to see what the lobbying efforts are at that level.
All right.
And do I assume that we don't start tracking dyslexia until 3rd grade?
No. Oh, no.
Why doesn't it show up on the report?
Often,
Till 3rd grade?
this is where you've heard me already talk about early identification. Often we don't identify kids early in kindergarten and 1st grade because we're waiting to see their achievement in reading. Part of our diagnostics, and you'll see where I talk about what our logical next steps are, we really need to look at being able to diagnose dyslexia early. Often we wait for our first rounds of achievement data to say children are struggling with reading, and there are better tools to diagnose. Reading achievement isn't the only indicator we should be looking at to diagnose dyslexia. We can look at phonemic and phonological awareness, working memory issues. There are a whole number of things we can be looking at in early childhood before we get our first rounds of reading achievement data. And so that'll be part of the work moving forward is how do we identify students? What are the trigger things we should be looking for very early on so that we can perhaps intervene early and prevent a student with dyslexia from needing more intensive special education later on. Not all students with dyslexia, if you get them early enough, will need ongoing IEPs forever. They can receive good services and learn to compensate for that disability rather well. So that's the target.
Andrea, I was struck by the pattern of identification in there.
Yeah, it is quite something, isn't
yes.
it?
What would you expect to see in a perfect world?
In a perfect world, I would expect to see more identification earlier and less identification later. I will say that you will see some new referrals and identifications in a perfect world in the secondary schools where you see the impact of executive function later on. You'll see the impact of some early onset psychiatric disorders later on, but this is not what I would expect to see in a typical pattern of identification. I would see that we should be identifying much of this much earlier on, particularly the learning challenges, language disabilities, autism for certain, learning disabilities. I think those should be identified much earlier on.
So Andrew, but this chart, like for dyslexia, for example, you said that once a child is diagnosed and they learn coping skills, how to, work through that disability, that they potentially would no longer need an IEP. So would they then drop off of this reporting, or would they still be identified even in 12th grade as having dyslexia because they still have it? It's just that they don't have an IEP for it. So what
They
does
would
this
drop
chart
off this chart.
All right, so this chart only represents kids who have IEPs as it
Correct.
relates to their needs.
Correct.
Okay.
And not 504s.
Not 504. This chart doesn't delineate out 504.
Okay.
Do you have a sense of the numbers of 504 students?
I don't have an exact figure in my head, but 504, the numbers for 504 are significant here, significant. And the reasoning, we have a lot of students with diagnosed attention deficit disorders, anxiety, depression, who are receiving 504, along with some students who have 504 for health-related issues, type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes would be one, heart anomalies, different things that require some level of modification or accommodation related, but don't require special education.
I found your narrative to be incredibly well done and very comprehensive. I think, you know, as you well know, this has been a subject of conversation in this community for a long, long time. And I don't know if this is this available on our website since it's part of our meeting?
Sure,
Is the narrative?
it's on board docs.
Because I would, well, yeah, but can the public access all the board docs?
Sure.
They can, okay. So I would encourage anyone in the public who has any interest in this area, and there are people talk about it constantly in the public, without a lot of knowledge, I think, sometimes, to read your narrative, because it takes you through the entire spectrum of what special ed is, and I think it was very, very well done, and I think it would give everybody probably as clear an understanding of what is involved, what it takes, what we're about, how it works, why it works, etc. So I would encourage anyone out there who has any interest to take the time to read this, and you'll come away shaking your head and going, wow, okay, because it is so complex and so, you know, intertwined. I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
On the chart that you provided, are 565 students.
Yes.
Out of our 4,030 as of November 1st, which represents, it's about 14% of our population.
Yes.
There has been conversation in this community for years that people move to Wilton because of the great service that we provide children with special needs. I don't think these numbers are out of line at all with our other communities. So I'm asking you, is it possible for you to reach out to your peers? Because they all report the same 13 areas.
Yes, they do.
And find out, and maybe come back to us with, I don't think New Canaan is at 5%. I think they're probably right along the line with us, as is Westport and Darien. And I'd like to put that perception to rest that all of our communities are in the same boat.
Yes.
And we're within a percentage point or two of every surrounding community with the number of kids out of our population that have special needs that we're dealing with. So is there a way that you can gather that information and come back to us with that?
Yes.
If you would.
I can also tell you, having spent 21 years in Fairfield, that your numbers are not.
I know they're not. Oh, I know it.
Out of line
okay,
to Fairfield.
No, I know it, but the public doesn't know.
But yes,
There's,
I'll be happy to put together a chart of the
Yeah.
DIRG.
And I think I'd like to
put
put that to bed once and for all. So everybody, people still in the community talk about it. People move in here, move to Wilton because, and we do a great job. We do a fantastic job, and I'm glad that we do. But there is a perception out there that they say it drives the cost up because people are coming here for the service. We're no different from any other community around us with the number of students out of our total population that fall into this category. And I'd like to really put, if we can, do whatever to put that to rest. Okay?
I will gladly provide some data on that subject. I would say that this isn't the only community where that conversation comes about.
I'm sure.
I think when you have a high-quality public education system, people do move to town to provide high-quality public education, including children, the parents of children with disabilities and families of children with disabilities. So while I don't believe that there is a great mass entry or immigration of parents of children with disabilities solely because they come to Wilton because of the quality of the education system as a whole, and special education is a part and parcel of that.
Exactly, and I agree with you. Okay, but we need, if we can, to the extent we can document that and show that, to put that to rest once and for all.
I'm happy to do that.
That'd be great. And then I have one other question for you, if you would. The DMC report.
Yes, she hasn't gotten to that yet.
Yeah, are you going to talk about that?
Well, we can talk about that now. I also gave you the homebound instruction. I'm assuming that's because that's been a question. It was in, I tried to give you the charts that were updatable compared to the chart you got in the spring from Dr. Paul. So I gave you the homebound instruction. As you see, currently we have 7 students who are on homebound instruction, 4 for medical issues, 2 for social and emotional issues, and 1 as a result of a disciplinary action. So I would also say that's not way out of whack proportionally to any other district at this time. So again, looking back at, and addressing the DMC report, there are the 6, DMC recommended that we look at 6 things as a district. First and foremost, looking at the SRBI model. Dr. Smith has been very much involved in that and working at that all last year, as you heard a couple of weeks ago in his presentation. And Dr. Smith and I have been working to create a smooth continuum between the SRBI and then the identification of special ed. So that's a piece of the work that is ongoing, and that will be part of our overall department improvement plan that will fit in with the district improvement plan, as well as I begin to work and continue to work with staff at the building level to create kind of the targeted ideas of how we're actually going to do that. But we're working with data right now to take a look at where the breakdown is, how we can identify whether or not we call a child with a disability yet, but how we make sure we're getting to those kids who come to us without the requisite skills to learn to read effectively, particularly those phonemic and phonological awareness skills, and we get intervention to them in kindergarten and first grade. Because you can do so much faster there than you can if you wait till 3rd and 4th grade. Again, one of the things that the DMC talked about was looking to increase efficiencies with the time spent with staff in direct service to students. And I think I'm spending time with the staff now to understand what are the draws that pull people away from direct service to students, and how we can flip that so that more time is spent in direct service to students and less time is spent in direct service to the processes. So that's something we're working on. If you look at one of the charts I gave you with a number of PPTs that have been held so far, that to me was also quite telling, because a PPT drags staff away from students. So if you look again at the bottom of page 13, there's a chart there, and the number of PPTs that are happening per month. I would expect the preschool numbers are pretty in line with where they should be, frankly. The high school numbers are way out of whack. So we need to start to look at what's driving that number of PPT meetings, so that we can look to bring that into a more reasonable place. I'm sorry, do you also have information on time spent preparing for the PPTs or duration of the PPTs? I don't have a mechanism to pull data for how much time staff spends away from students in preparation for a PPT meeting, but certainly that, I have to figure out a mechanism to track that.
It's significant.
It's significant.
There's a little bit alluded to in the DMC report, with a little bit percentage of times you can
Right,
translate it
because we're
into
trying to
minutes or hours.
reduce that.
Yeah.
So I've got to figure out ways to, I don't want to add more paperwork to the staff. I don't want to do more to take them away. So I'm trying to figure out a mechanism to track that effectively without giving them more work to do, because I want them working with kids. So that's the push. I could have them tracking their time all day long, but is that efficient? Doesn't that work at cross purposes to having the staff working with kids? So I'm trying to figure out ways to get good information without adding more work onto the staff.
Thank you. And the other thing that struck me reading your report, which is very illuminating, and the DMC report, and trying to make some sense out of it, was, the DMC recommendations would say like streamline or be efficient. And they tell you how to do everything else, but the streamline and efficient piece were very broad terms.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, how, are there strategies that we, aren't implementing, but how do you define those? I mean, it takes a certain amount of time to prepare for a meeting. Do you have to think faster? Write faster? I mean, it can't be that. It has to be something else. And I'm just wondering how realistic some of the expectations are, given the legal requirements and the expectations for good communication. How do you make something that is that complicated, to use your word, streamlined?
Right.
So I think
that's the challenge.
that we have to, well, it's the challenge, but we also have to set, I think, fairly realistic expectations for what that can mean and what that can look like. Because you have to do the job well to communicate with the parents and assess the students and all of that, which has to take time. So I just hope that we don't set unrealistic expectations for becoming more efficient, whatever that is broadly defined. You know, they don't really define it specifically, so.
Right, I think when the DMC report first came out, though, it was just really eye-opening on how much time was being spent.
Oh, yeah, and there is a lot of time, and I'm just trying to say, I'm not sure
No, I know,
how
I
much
think
of it is
that's what-
easily avoidable.
Right.
Well, I think there are some strategies we can use to, when you look toward the end, I talked about some of the next levels of work. I believe in working with parents, we can help parents understand and work with them to understand how to make a meeting better. So that a PPT is as efficiently run as possible. That meets the needs of the family and the parents so that they have good information and can be partners. But for example, rather than coming to a PPT and trying to write goals and objectives at that table, teachers and parents can be working electronically so that the goals and objectives are really, do we all agree to the goals and objectives? Yes. Versus let's go through them word for word. So those are strategies that require us to start to utilize some of the mechanisms technologically. So opening up a Google Doc and putting through goals and objectives, and parents can be a part of that process electronically, collaborate that way, so that the PPT meeting is really just yep, we did those, we agree, they're exactly what we want it to be. So there are efficiencies. The other piece is helping to educate all of the teams at the table on how to facilitate a meeting to its logical conclusion. That's hard to do, especially when we're talking about kids. So there are strategies, and the other pieces are to use the law, use some of the opportunities available to us in the law. For example, amending IEPs without a PPT when there's mutual consent of the parent and the school. I don't know that we do that enough. Okay. When we agree, when we know what we want to do and we agree, we can do a little bit of paperwork and do that without convening the meeting, pulling teachers away from kids. So I think there are some strategies. It's not going to be perfect by any stretch, but I think we can get better at focusing on valuing time and direct service to students. And I think I can't imagine a parent and a school that wouldn't agree that that's a good goal, to get more time spent in direct service to students. But it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah. On the PPT numbers, how do they compare to last year?
That's what
I don't know last year's PPT numbers at the end of the year, and I don't know that we have them month to month, but I'll certainly go back and look, and I can tell you. If they are similar, then they are still out of whack.
Yeah, okay, okay, yeah.
And do you have numbers on outplaced students, numbers of outplaced students year over year?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I don't have that exact number in my head, but yes, I know I can give you, I can send the information about the number of students currently outplaced, the number of students who were outplaced at this time, that were outplaced in total last year. Yes, I can give you that information.
The only other comment I'd like to was I spoke about it in our last meeting, and I went back and read in great detail again for like the umpteenth time the DMC report, and the $2 million, the number that's bandied about, all comes in one area: speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. Only in that area. Those three, and it adds up to $1,970,000, their recommendations, but just in that area, that's where it all is. And if you read their language, it says we could repurpose. It doesn't say we're going to save. It says we could repurpose the money into other areas if we needed to. realize approximately they could be used towards other initiatives, could free approximately, or repurpose approximately. So the only real savings that they're saying is there. I mean, we could, they're saying we should repurpose the money. It's not savings, that we reuse it in other areas where we have needs. And 800,000 of it could be used towards other initiatives. Another 168,000 in physical therapists, repurpose that. Occupational therapists, free approximately 400,000. So it isn't across the broad spectrum of special services what we're doing and your area. It's just speech therapists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. Those areas.
Right.
They say there's $2 million there, and I think people have misinterpreted what their report said, that it isn't all savings. They're saying we could repurpose the money because we have other needs and that we need to spend money in other areas perhaps. So I just want to make that point very clear. It's not across the whole spectrum of serving special needs students. It's just in those three areas: speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. It's $2 million. Is the $2 million that they're talking about.
And if you dig further into the report, it
Yeah.
really talks about how effective scheduling of those services.
Yeah.
So we are looking at
Right.
scheduling those services, looking at effective grouping models for
Right.
students.
Yeah.
In some of those related services, and making sure that there's a range and a continuum of service there. So it's certainly on the front burner of things we're trying
Yeah.
to address, to be able to utilize all of our staff in service to students and do some of this earlier intervention and a number of things.
And the only other comment I'm done is that there are references throughout are to national averages also. Well, Wilton is not the middle of Iowa. And no, I'm not disparaging the middle of Iowa in any way, shape, or form. But I think, our costs here are not relative to what the middle of Iowa is. I mean, there's so many, you just can't do a national average, and then we are 2 times the national average or 3 times the national average. It's a meaningless comparison in my view. We
I
do
also
what we
think the
need to do.
expectations
Yeah.
of the parents of Wilton, the expectations of parents in Fairfield County,
Yeah.
on what meaningful educational progress means
Yeah.
are different.
Yeah.
And so the stakes are high here. We
Yeah.
expect more of our kids, and that includes children with disabilities. And so
And it costs more to provide those services here in Wilton than it does in Iowa.
it certainly does.
Okay?
I would also
Enough said.
say that, special education costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Doing it well costs money. Not doing it well costs more.
It's gonna cost more, yeah,
Mhm.
as our friends down the road can attest.
Correct.
All right.
One thing that, to build on what Glenn was saying, in addition to the, some of the therapies, was interesting in the DMC report, just to read their perspective about reading intervention services and the
Yeah.
staffing levels in different categories of staffing, and maybe it was too heavy in one category, it needed to be beefed up, or it might be, and I don't know what the needs are, and that's where general ed and special ed and the transition and the SRBI comes in, and it might be helpful to get a little clarity around that. Reading teachers, special ed teachers, reading consultants, paraprofessionals, classroom teachers, just a little bit, it's just sort of a view into how are we, sort of assigning those resources, and do we have the right balance in the right categories of personnel?
And that's what Dr. Smith and I are working with the staff on, is trying to really look at, are we identifying the right kids, and are they being seen by the right people for the right
time,
duration,
yeah.
intensity,
Uh-huh.
and how do we know that?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that of all of that staff, paraprofessionals, teachers, special education teachers, reading people, do we have the right people doing the right work with the right kids that is leading to overall achievement for everyone? And that's kind of that, when I talked about that continuum of service,
Yeah.
I want to
Okay.
we want to make sure that it is not something that is, where there are bright lines drawn between students, but we know that the right people are working with the right kids in the right way. That's really part of what we're working on, and the next step of the work is creating that transparent continuum that parents understand, so that they know what's gonna happen when things start to show.
Yeah,
And how we're gonna be looking, how we're gonna be not waiting for the student to fail before we intervene, but understanding what the skills are that lead to success and making sure they have them from day one.
And you talked about parents just now and also in the document, and you talked about the partnership.
Yes.
And so I'm just wondering what your perspective is in terms of how we are at establishing partnerships early on, and you've had experience in other districts. Where, you know, I think we've got the best staff in the world, of course. So, but how are we at building a partnership with something that can be a little overwhelming to parents who aren't familiar with the law and all of that, especially early on?
As part of my listening tour, I've been talking to a lot of parents, both individually as well as in groups, about this. And I think we can do more in helping to understand the parent's perspective. And especially around this process. This process is daunting. Mm-hmm. It can be very daunting for parents. Mm-hmm. Walking into just some of the simple optics of walking into a room when there are 10 professional educators looking at you to talk about your child is daunting. I know parents who don't sleep for days ahead of a PPT. And so I think we need to do more to understand that perspective and help to ease that tension so that parents know that while the process is legally prescribed, we have to do certain things, that we can still take a minute to listen, to understand that fear and that anxiety, to make sure their kids are going to be okay, to help them see a path forward for the future for their kids from those early days. And so we have a lot of work to do to help parents, and to then get some feedback from them on, are the processes we're using helping you? And so if you look in some of my next steps, I'll be suggesting that we put in place some mechanisms to give parents a chance to give us some feedback so that we can adjust our processes. I also think that if we do that and make the process work for parents better, we'll have fewer PPTs. We'll have fewer meetings, we'll have fewer time away from kids because parents' needs will be met. So I think that's a part of gaining some feedback from parents. Is the process working? Do you feel heard? When you leave a PPT, did you feel like your voice was heard in that PPT? Whether or not we agree, that's not all about agreement all the time. It can be that at least, I may not agree with the outcome, but I was heard. Because that's what I hear from parents most often, is that they leave meetings not having felt heard. And that creates dissonance. Okay. And so they ask for another meeting because they want to be heard. Those are the kinds of things I hear relatively frequently.
So there are some very simple strategies that could go a long way. One of the things I've suggested to the administrators is that they make a phone call to the parent before the PPT to go over the agenda, because they often walk into these meetings not sure what's going to happen. And also inviting the parent to then add to the agenda so that we're not, how do I put it, taken by surprise at a PPT about some of their issues, and kind of negotiating what might be a PPT issue versus another issue that you might want to address with the teacher directly. I think that brings anxiety down quite a bit, and prevents additional meetings having to happen. Because very often if a parent brings up an issue that we're not prepared to talk about at a PPT, we have to say, we're not prepared, we have to have another meeting. And that just creates frustration with parents, so.
Sometimes they're little things. For
Very
example,
little
I've said to folks, we're also technologically oriented. Sometimes when a parent is sitting in a room talking to a group of educators who all have a laptop opened in front of them, it makes them feel like there's a barrier, even a physical barrier between them. And it makes the parent feel like you're not really present because I'm worried that you might be doing your email, or I'm worried that you might be doing something else over there, and you're not really listening to what's about my child. And so that gives the parent that feeling that maybe you're not here for me. Right, maybe you're not really present in this meeting because you're doing too many things. So, I encourage people to say, look, we may only have an hour, but let's make it an hour about one child,
Mhm.
right? One child, close down, we need one laptop to take minutes, everything else can be closed down for that hour. And I think some of those things are optics that help parents feel like the people are actually in the room for them. And those are little things that go a long way. And it's not that people aren't doing that, but sometimes in our haste, we lose sight of what it feels like to be in the parent's chair.
Yeah, good point. Okay.
It looked like you had a nice turnout here at Boone a couple of weeks ago when you did.
We did.
Were there any surprises for you that came out of that discussion?
No, there weren't any surprises.
Okay,
I
good.
didn't, there
Well,
was
that's good.
nothing that I have not started to hear as emerging themes from the staff as
Yeah.
well, which I also think is very telling. I
Yeah.
think the staff and the parents are very much on the same page.
Good.
I'm not
good.
sure, there's kind of a direction that we're all
Yeah.
going in, but I think the emerging areas of need are consistent with what the staff is saying as well.
Good.
So
That's good.
that's good,
Yeah.
that's very
Yeah.
good. It was a great turnout, I
Yeah.
learned a great deal about the community and its values
Yeah.
and where they would like to see the next level of work, and I have been very impressed with the community's willingness to kind of be really open and share information with me and offer support to help
Yeah.
start take the next level of work. I mean, certainly Ann Paul has, led for many years and did great work here. And so the glass is not empty. The
Yeah.
glass is full.
Oh, I think not. I mean, the
and I
feedback
think
we get
it's,
from parents is really phenomenal about the work you
it's
do.
just the next level of work.
Okay, good.
So, anytime you have questions, feel free. You see what my thoughts are and recommendations are, and I'm happy to, and will be expanding on them as we go through the budget process and other arenas.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a update on the athletics program from Chris McDougall.
Thank you very much. I have my clicker over here. Lucille's agreed to push the buttons for me, so thank you very much. The layout threw me off. I was planning on hitting the screen, but that's okay. So thank you very much. We currently have 31 teams plus one special team. The 31 teams, it's really 30, but cheerleading is a double team. It's a double season, the same athletes in both seasons. In the fall, they work with the football team and cheer for them, and in the winter, they work with both basketball teams and they compete themselves. So they're a double season. But our fall sports include cheerleading, boys and girls cross country, field hockey, football, boys and girls soccer, girls swimming and diving, and volleyball. Our winter sports are boys and girls basketball, cheerleading again, gymnastics, boys and girls ice hockey, boys and girls indoor track, boys and girls ski team, boys swimming and diving, and wrestling. Our spring sports, which is our most popular season, as you'll see, as we'll talk about in a few minutes. Baseball, softball, boys and girls lacrosse, boys and girls track and field, boys tennis, and boys and girls golf. By the way, girls golf has tripled in size since we started 4 years ago. And our newest sport, unified sports, which I'm very proud of that, and we'll be hosting them. We've already hosted them on one event this year in soccer. We'll be hosting a basketball event, hopefully indoor track this winter.
Can you talk a little bit about what that is, unified sports?
Unified sports. It's a combination. We're actually calling it United, Wilton United.
Right.
It's a combination of athletes, which is our special needs student athletes, and their helpers, which are regular ed students, working together in a sport of choice, so they can experience the wonderful world of competition.
Great.
So,
If you've never been to a unified game,
Mhm.
it'll change your life.
Yeah.
Go.
It's
The
incredible.
best.
Yeah,
The best.
unbelievable.
it is. So we will we'll be posting those games very, very, very soon. So they're going to start practicing after the new year on Fridays before the basketball games. I'm going to try to get some exhibition games during the varsity games.
Will they be playing spring soccer?
Possibly spring soccer, definitely spring track.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So do they just play intramurally here at school, or do they play other schools?
We'll play other schools.
Other schools?
Yep. Yep. Greenwich, Brian McMahon, Fairfield Ludlow, just to name a few.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. Our participation trends are on the increase. If you notice our fall sports, these are current. Our fall, we are had the highest fall numbers in my 5 years here, with 466 eligible students playing the 9 different sports.
Was that across sports, or was there a surge in cross-country, or?
No, that was across sports. Across sports. Some sports were actually down. Field hockey was down a little bit, but most of them were up.
How's football?
Football's great. It's way up.
Participation levels?
Yes. Yep, way
Well,
up. Yep. They had, I believe, around 83 freshmen to seniors on the football team this year. So it was way up. In past years, it's been hovering around 60s, and some years even less than that, but we were way up in football.
That's interesting, giving all the national attention on concussions and
That's true.
safety.
That's true.
Well,
Our coaches do a
yeah.
phenomenal job with the new techniques that are surrounded by football. You know, no more leading with the heads and things like that. So it's all the new techniques, and our coaching staff does a very, very, very good job going out there and learning the new techniques and teaching to the kids. They don't progress until they master the technique.
Have any of the rules, I'm sorry to belabor this, but have any of the rules changed in football, given the safety issues?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The CIAC has passed down several rules related to safety. That's what we're mandated to have a week off of zero contact. We can't even play a football game in the middle of the season. There's contact rules related by number of minutes you can have in practice. Yeah, there's a nice thick book full of new rules related to that to keep the kids safe. Yeah.
Great.
Well, we went from 7 graduating seniors in football in 2011 to 17
Oh my gosh,
seniors
wow.
this year.
Right.
So that's a pretty big jump.
There you go.
So my question about participation, in any sport at any given time, there's only, X number of players who could be on the court or on the field and
Right.
whatever, and then the rest are on the bench.
Depending on the
waiting
sport.
for their turn or whatever, depending on the sport.
Right.
Right, so at some point with these sports, there's got to be a cutoff as far as participation. Otherwise, if I take everybody who tries out, many of them are going to just sit on the bench the entire season. So how do you balance that?
Well, the coaches will, for example, basketball, both boys and girls kept 30 players. And does that equal out to 10 at each level? Not necessarily. They pull what they believe that they need for both practice and the games. Because the practice players serve a purpose as well to help get the starters, make them the best they can be for the game. So some sports, like basketball, only 5 people can be on the court
Right.
at a time. So they're not going to keep everybody, and unfortunately, there's cuts that have to be made. Other sports like indoor track, everybody can participate, everybody. So there are no cuts in sports like indoor track. And a lot of the individual sports, there are no cuts.
Is there opportunity to add additional JV teams when there's a large participation rate, and or just an intramural team, or so that kids can just play who want to play?
Well, actually, our town does a very, very good job with youth sports. Very,
Okay.
very good. So people that, some selected not to, for example, basketball, selected not to play on the high school team, and they just went right to the Parks and Rec team. And others tried out, and they're just going through their cuts right now. The boys are, and the girls finished up. They tried out. If they didn't make the team, they're going to play Parks and Rec, or going to play another sport. So this town does a wonderful job with athletics, and not just in the high school, throughout, and
Correct.
giving everybody the opportunity that they want. Yeah. Okay. So making our total participation so far for this year, we are up. Next, please. We are up 66 athletes so far this year, and that is not including this coming spring season, which is our most popular season. On average, we have about 60% of the students in the school play at least one sport. I am expecting that to go up this year because of the recent trends right now.
Is that pretty much average for a high school, or is that higher than average?
That's
60?
been our average since I've been here. We're
Okay.
we're actually up. When I first started here, we're 58%. We're at 60 now, and I think we're gonna go up, like I
Why
said,
is
this
it going
year.
up?
Good question.
Just-
I'm not
would you know?
exactly sure.
Just-
No.
okay.
Yeah. Interests, we've been successful.
That's great.
Winning,
Yeah.
Winning helps.
Winning does
Yeah.
help,
Speaking of
absolutely.
winning, look
I'm
who's on
sorry.
the screen, yeah.
winning.
Speaking of winning, I might as
Speaking
well
of
talk about
winning.
Morgan right now. Morgan's the only athlete I'm going to highlight, and not that any of the other athletes are less important, because they're not. Everybody has their importance. But Morgan, this is 2 years in a row she's won the FCX title for cross country, girls cross country.
Wow.
2 years in a row she's won the Class L title and the CIC State Open title. This year she came in fourth at the in the New England Championships. Last weekend she came in fourth in the Foot Locker Regional Championships, and this Saturday she is running at the National Championships in San Diego.
Great.
So she is something, and she's up for Gatorade Player of the Year again. She
Is
won
she a
that
senior?
last year.
She's a senior.
She is a senior. Yep. My emails are filling up with colleges that are very interested in her.
I bet.
So.
Good for her.
Yeah, so as our coaching staff,
Top students.
it's pretty
Nice
balanced
profile.
as far as their longevity, their tenure. 8 coaches, and I just put the head coaches in here because our assistant coaches is unfortunately more or less a revolving door, because they start here and they get head coaching jobs someplace else. So 8 coaches have been here for 20 years or more. A few of those head coaches have been here over 30 years. 7 coaches 10 years or more, 7 more 5 years or more, and 8 have been recently hired in the last 5 years. So, but 100% of our coaches are all certified by the Connecticut Coaching Association, the CIAC. They are all mandatory state certified CPR, first aid, AED, and concussion training. If they do not do that, they do not step on the field. So. Our athletic committee is currently the Athletic Steering Committee, which we are currently looking for anybody interested in serving on this year's Athletic Steering Committee. That committee reviews the athletic handbook, the vision statement, our common goals, our core values, our things like that. They will also be going over this year's goal is to go over the code of conduct, which is also in there right now, but to enhance the code of conduct and to formulate a plan for every parent to sign off and player to sign off on the code of conduct before they can step on the field starting next year. There is one in the handbook now. Everybody signs off that they've read the handbook, but we all know that as they register their sons and daughters, they're just signing off. So this will be a paper form that will have to be signed off before they can walk onto the field. Okay. Our newest committee is the Class Act Council. This was formulated by the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference. This is a student-run organization where we actually have a president, a vice president, and secretaries, and they are promoting sportsmanship within Wilton High School. Not just the student body, but also adults. They're formulating, which is going to be put into the basketball season this coming season. They're formulating what they believe their core common values are for athletics and how they want people to act at games. Both the players, the parents, and the fans, the student fans. And so they will not have to discipline anybody. That'll be our job. But if somebody's acting out based on one of their rules, there will be some consequences. So anybody watching, if you plan on coming to basketball games, there will be plenty of lollipops set aside to help you put that in your mouth.
I like that idea. Stuff everywhere.
Our eligibility, to be eligible for athletics at the high school, you must be in good academic standing, because we firmly believe that academics come first. For the first marking period, they must have a 2.0 GPA in order to continue in athletics. So the first marking period grades are determined after the first marking period. That finishes the fall season for anybody that's left this year. Unfortunately, it just happened to be football was the only team left, and girls swimming. Second market period, and that also affects their whether or not they can try out for the winter season. Quarter 2 eligibility is continuance for the winter season and the start of the spring season. That one's a little tougher because that happens in February, and spring season's still a month away. But if they do not have a 2.0 at the end of that second market period, they will not be able to start for the spring season. Okay. And according to the CIAC, if there is an incomplete, they'll have 10 days to make that up, and then they'll become eligible. But in the meantime, if they're incompletes, depending on the situation, they may not be able to continue with athletics until that incomplete is made up. Okay? Failures, scholastic failures cannot be made up. That grade stays, and they remain ineligible for the rest of the season.
Are there any discipline or behavioral eligibility requirements? Like, for example, if an athlete has detention or whatever, are they still allowed to go to practice that day and to the game that weekend?
Well, some of it is related to each sport.
Okay.
If they are serving in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension, they are not allowed to practice or play that day. If something happens on the field, there are CIAC rules, and they are taken out from that game and the next game. And then the Class Act committee will be stepping in. That's the other thing that those students will be doing. If a student has an infraction, whether it's on the field or in the school, and they're an athlete, they will have to meet in front of the Class Act committee, and those peers will decide their fate moving forward.
Okay.
So.
If there are substance abuse violations, there's a 14-day participation rule
Right.
violation, so students are ineligible for athletics and co-curriculars and parking privileges for 14 days.
Right. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Yep. So, this is our code of conduct as it stands right now in our athletic handbook. As you can see, for the student athlete, academics definitely come first. They must be a good citizen of the school and community, be the best they can be, respect teammates, coaching staff, and opponents, adhere to all participation rules, abstain from using substance abuse that are deemed harmful to one's athletic performance, and that includes any substance abuse. Parents and spectators display good sportsmanship at all times, be respectful of all players, coaches, officials, and other spectators. Never target and never target anyone or abuse when, whether it to be verbal, physical, emotional. Never engage in name-calling, taunting, harassment, obscenities, and that goes for not just to other parents, it goes to the officials. So everybody likes to yell at those officials. Always be a positive role model, cheer for your team, not against the opponent, understand the rules of the game. You'd be surprised at how many people don't understand the rules of games. and their children have been watching it for years, or playing it for years, and
They still, yeah.
they still.
You gotta be talking about field hockey.
No comment.
I still don't understand those.
And remember that attending these contests is still a privilege, and it is a privilege to watch our children play. I'm a parent myself, and I love watching my kids play. So. Our conflict resolution policy, this is a list, and our coaches love this when I put it up there at our parent meeting. This tells the parents what they can talk to the coaches about and what they cannot talk to the coaches about. So the appropriate concerns to discuss with coaches are the treatment of their child, whether it's mentally and or physically, ways to help your child improve, concerns about your child's behavior, missed practice or for vacations and or games, and any safety concerns you might have. The issues that coaches will not discuss with parents is any game type strategy or team strategy, coaching policies, calling plays, playing time, that's the most popular. Other student athletes, the selection of captains, and the selection of special awards. Those are issues that you are not allowed to talk to coaches about because the coaches get to make those decisions themselves. Okay. And in a lot of those areas, the student athletes are involved in the decision-making process as well. So. If there is a conflict, this is our resolution process. First and foremost, we try to get these students, or high school students, we try to get them to advocate for themselves, first and foremost. We try to get them to go talk to the coach. Now, that could be a daunting task if you're a freshman playing on a varsity sport, which can very easily happen. So I let every single team know that I'm there. You know, they can come talk to me first, and I'll kind of guide them through how to go talk to the coach. They can also go to their captain and ask how to talk to the coach. But we do ask them to try to advocate for themselves. Past that, the parents and student athlete will then meet with the head coach if it goes, and so far it's stopped there for us. After that, then the parents can come talk to me, and then if needed, then it would go with myself and the coach and the principal. All right. Accolades from the fall season. We did not win any FCX championships, but we came pretty close. Cross country, we did win the Eastern Division championships, led by Miss Morgan. Girls swimming won the Eastern championships and had their first undefeated season, regular season. Field hockey was a FCX runner-up. 37 student athletes received postseason honors, either in All-State, All-FCX, any of those, so 37 of our athletes. Our coaches also received some honors. Jeff G. was cross-country FCX Coach of Excellence, and last year he was the National Coach of the Year for cross-country. Todd Stevens, our girls swim coach, was FCX Coach of the Year this year. And our new field hockey coaches, Elizabeth Pisco and Tony Ann Cortina, were also coaches of excellence for becoming runner-up in the FCX.
They were both given that honor?
They were both. They were co-coaches, so they were both given the honor, yeah. Okay. This was from last year, the class of 2017. Last year we had 161 eligible seniors. 39 of those seniors are participating in college athletics. 3 at the Ivy League, 15 in Division I, 2 in Division II, and 19 of them in Division III. So that's a pretty high percentage of students going on to play at the next level. Where we stand against the other schools, I'm not 100% sure. It's hard to find that information, but so, and then I listed the sports that they're in. Now you'll notice in the sports that they're listed in, not all of those sports are CIAC sports. It's sports that we recognize. We still recognize them when they go on to play at a different level. Okay, so that's why you'll see fencing in there and you'll see crew. We actually had a student a couple of years ago for a Division I scholarship in rugby. So, and he was a swimmer. So,
Wow.
yeah. So this year, Wilton High School will be hosting a plethora of postseason events. This past fall we hosted the FCX girls semifinals. We always host the eastern side of the for indoor track. Western is hosted by Staples. We will be hosting both the semifinals and finals for the FCX Boys Championships this year.
That's
And Joel is doing his best to try to bring us back there again.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
We typically host the FCX Championships for boys and girls tennis. And this year, the CIAC just called me last week asking if they can use our brand new course to host the boys tennis championships for the CIAC, for the state tournament.
Oh, great.
So,
There's financial benefit, I assume, in being the host of.
nope.
No?
No?
We get a nice thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. All goes to FCX or CIAC.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's an
Yeah.
honor to be hosting.
Just an,
those,
okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah. So,
fabulous.
that's it for me. Any questions?
Yeah. Are there any sports that other schools in the FCIAC have that we don't have?
Yes, boys volleyball. We were one of the only, not the, but one of the only FCX schools.
Is that
with
the
boys
only
volleyball.
one?
I believe so.
Other than that-
Well, as far as CIAC teams.
Yeah. Or
CIAC.
FCIAC.
Well,
FCIAC or C.
Yeah, yeah.
So boys volleyball is the only sport that we're missing.
From the CIAC. Fencing, some have that, some have rugby, some have crew recognized by the school. Those aren't necessarily CIAC teams.
Right. All right.
Like our ski team is not, technically girls ice hockey is not CIAC yet.
Okay.
Is there any interest in boys volleyball?
There is. We have a young man, a senior, Joel Darkwa, who has been really trying for the last couple of years to gain the interest in
Yeah.
boys volleyball. Boys volleyball is actually a spring sport.
So how many kids do you need to make a team?
Well, 6 would be on the court at
Right.
a time, but
And then you have-
we need a
but
few
then
more than
you need
6.
At least a dozen or so.
Right, exactly. We actually have a teacher on staff that is interested in coaching that boys team if we can gain the interest. We are gonna, this spring, we are gonna start a club team.
That would not be an expensive sport to field either.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah,
No, it wouldn't.
so, okay.
Right.
So we have a
We
girls
just need the
volleyball
interest.
team.
Oh, yes.
Girls is a very good one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, yep. Yeah, our girls program is growing.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So basketball season started last night with the first scrimmage.
Scrimmage, right.
Against, well, it was a scrimmage, but it
That's right.
started, okay, against Berlin. We won all 6 quarters
Right.
handily
That's right.
last night. And it was fun to watch.
The very first game will be this Saturday when girls ice hockey goes to Brantford, and the girls basketball will start the next games at home starting next week against Cheshire on Tuesday.
Yep.
And they'll be honoring the 1989 FCI championship team next Friday. Christine, Lilly, and crew will be coming back to Wilton.
Nice.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are moving on to our one and only action item, which is to discuss and approve the 2018-19 Wilton Public Schools District Calendar. We had this on, I think, as an action item last time, and pulled it back because our school calendar is actually a part of our union agreement with our teachers, and there was some pushback. We had originally tried to capture Columbus Day as a school day, but the staff preferred to keep that as a holiday. So we made a slight tweak to the calendar where there will be school next year on Columbus Day, and as a result, we pushed back into June
No,
one
no,
day.
No school on Columbus Day.
No, they made it.
Did I not
instead
say
of a-
that?
Yeah,
Right.
no.
I said the opposite?
Yeah.
Sorry. There will not be school on Columbus Day next year. And as a result, we pushed back an extra day in June. That is the change that is being proposed to the calendar
So Chris,
as it is right now.
it is part of the teachers'
Yes.
union contract
Yeah.
that we
They have
get
to
their
approve.
approval on.
Yeah, so the document that's in the packet right now has been approved by the teachers' union. That said, well, why don't we go ahead, is there a motion to approve?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there discussion?
Oh, like I had that question.
Okay.
Is that
Um,
typical that would be, was that like in Ridgefield, was that part of the teachers'
Yeah, I
union?
mean, usually you want it to, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, I think it makes sense. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was in favor.
You're in favor? All right. Any opposed? Any
How to be
abstained?
quick.
Okay,
How to be
we're good.
quick, Gretchen.
That said, I think we mentioned this last time, we'd like to be 2 years ahead on the calendar going forward. So right now, the 2020,
I have both versions ready. Kevin's just gonna take a look at them when he returns. They'll be probably on the 21st agenda for review.
okay, well, but the first stop will be with the Teaching and Learning Committee.
Right.
That way, yeah,
Yeah, we started discussing it this morning. You know,
Okay.
Just kicked around some ideas and thoughts.
right. And that way, I
But
know
then,
that,
We don't have a meeting until January.
there've been concerns about
Right,
bringing back the March break, the April break, so there'll be plenty of time
right.
to build those into calendars going forward. And then they arrive at the policy committee, and eventually we'll get them to the board.
Well, we don't have a teaching and learning until January though, just so you know, from a timing perspective. We don't
I
meet again
think,
until January.
Our goal is to have these in place by the end of January, early February.
Okay, all right then, we're
So I
good.
think, yeah, we've got a good timeline for that. Okay,
Just maybe a quick comment, and I don't know where this goes, but one of the comments that came out of our budget discussion with the public, and it wasn't necessarily budget related, talked about professional learning days. And the possibility, if they're half days, where we do half-day professional learning days,
mhm.
that we do it in the afternoon versus the morning. because of the difficulty in parents and transportation
I
in the
think
morning.
that's one of those issues where
But-
there's differences of opinion.
Okay, well, I just.
On that, just
Right.
as there's differences of opinions over the March break versus the April break, and it all comes down to what Dr. Smith thinks works best for.
Okay, so I just throw it out there as a,
Academic
as a subject
calendar.
to discussion.
Yeah, no, I
But,
know that's,
Okay.
thank you, thank you. Okay, our future business, our next meeting will be on Thursday, December 21st. At this point, we would like to welcome any members of the public who would like to add any comments. Seeing no one, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You made it
All right.
to
Do your gravel.
Congratulations.
Did it.